Picture this: a golf cart, a crowd of strangers, and one ridiculous question that turned into one of the best days of my year. Not a plan, no permission, just a what if and a friend who said, let's do it. By the end of today's episode, you're going to look at your own life and your own calendar completely differently, because I think you're saying no to some things that you don't even realize you're saying no to. This is the Lit Up Life with Debbie Heiser, and this episode is all about where we crash a parade. Join in, grab your coffee, or take a walk and listen in. There's a moment in life when we sense an opening, where the life we've built begins inviting us into something more. Not because anything's wrong, but because we're ready for a deeper, truer expression of who we really are. This is the Lit Up Life podcast, conversations for those who are no longer interested in pushing, proving, or performing, and are ready to lead from truth, alignment, and inner authority. I'm Debbie Heiser, and here we talk about the inner shifts that change everything, how belief, identity, and energetic leadership shape the way you live, work, and choose. This isn't about becoming someone new, it's about coming home to who you already are. Hey there. Before we dive in today, I want you to think about something for a second. I want you to think about the best moments of your life, not the milestones. I mean the moments, the little moments, the ones that still make you laugh when you remember them. And now I want you to ask yourself, were any of those scheduled on your calendar? Because I know most of mine weren't. Not many of them were on my, actually, none of them were on my vision board. Not one of them was color-coded in my planner. They happened because at some point I was willing to just say yes. And look, if you know me, you know I'm not anti-planning. I build strategy with my clients. I have a color-coded calendar. Every day I'm looking at systems. I love a good KPI, believe it or not. But somewhere along the way, I learned something that has changed my business and honestly my whole life. And it's this: strategy gets you moving, but openness is what lets the magic actually find you. So today I want to talk about exploration, about curiosity, about what happens when you step into something that was never part of the plan. Because here's the thing: the opportunities that end up changing everything, they almost never showing up looking like an opportunity. They show up, frankly, looking like a ridiculous idea, an invitation that makes no logical sense whatsoever. And so I've got a story for you. It happened on the 4th of July, and it is hands down one of the best examples of this that I have ever lived through. So stick with me, because by the end of this episode, I promise you're going to start looking at your own life a little differently. I think a lot of us are saying no to things we don't even realize that we're saying no to. So let's get into it. What I've found is we think we want freedom, but we actually want certainty. Because I want to start here because I think it's really the root of the whole thing. Most of us will tell you, if you ask us, that we want freedom, right? That's part of what I help people with. That's the dream, is freedom. But listen and watch to what we actually do. Watch what we actually chase. It's really certainty. It's safety, because our brains are designed to predict and protect, to create safety. So we want certainty that the launch is going to work before we launch it. We want certainty before we hire someone, certainty before we raise our prices, certainty before we go on a date, certainty before we make the move, take the trip, or make the investment. And I get it. Certainty feels safe. It feels responsible even. It's what we've been taught to do. But certainty has a cost that nobody talks about. It kills discovery. It kills exploration every single time. So think about it. If Christopher Columbus had waited until he knew exactly what was on the other side of the ocean, he never would have sailed. If every entrepreneur out there waited until every variable was locked down and known, there wouldn't be any businesses. None. Zero. Risk. Exploration requires uncertainty. Always. There's no version of this where you get to explore and know how it turns out. We have to pick one. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened on the 4th of July this year for me. So we're gonna have a little story time here. It's the 4th of July, one of those really gorgeous Idaho summer days where it feels like the entire town, right? It just spills outside. It was a little crazy, to be honest with you. Flags are everywhere, families everywhere, kids are running around, music's playing somewhere that you can't quite locate because there's numerous parade floats getting lined up. The whole day just has this like hum to it. The energy of it is really high. And my friend who has a 1960s golf cart, Nicole, and I were cruising around in this golf cart. We didn't have any agenda, no grand plan. Definitely, and I can't stress this enough, definitely no intention of becoming part of the day's actual entertainment. And we were going up and down the street looking at the parade floats. And I was like, hey, this is some of the best way to watch the parade. We get to do it in the golf cart and see everything. And so out of nowhere, as we're pulling up towards the end of doing this thought just pops into my head. And I look over at her and I go, what if we joined the parade? What if we just pulled up next to these people and kind of joined in? Now, be honest with me. Most people in that moment immediately start listing every reason that that's a terrible idea. We can't do that. We're not registered. We don't belong in there. We're going to get kicked out. What are people going to think? But instead, my friend Nicole just looks at me, smiles, and said, really? I go, yeah. And she goes, let's do it. So that's the whole decision. That's it. There wasn't a committee meeting. There was no SWOT analysis that was done. There was no risk assessment, no 15-minute strategy huddle. Just let's do it. And we drove that golf cart right into the parade. And so let me tell you a little bit about what happened next, because that's the part that I just can't get over. So I want you to picture this. We roll into this 4th of July parade, completely unannounced, completely unplanned. We just kind of go and we're there. And the people in front of us, they thought it was hilarious. So instead of questioning us, instead of calling us out, they welcomed us in. They handed us some swag to decorate the golf cart. They loaded up the golf cart with necklaces that we could give out to kids. And within about 90 seconds, we weren't outsiders anymore. We were a part of it. People were cheering as we went through. Kids were waving like we were somebody. Every single person just assumed that we belonged there. And we acted like we did. And here's the part that really got me as I was thinking about it afterwards. Nobody cared how we got there. Nobody. They cared that we showed up and brought some joy with us. Nobody was checking. Nobody asked, did you two fill out an application? They were responding to the energy that we walked in with. That's it. That's the whole equation. And even later, my friend was dropping her sister off in the golf cart and somebody rode by in a bike and said, you guys were the best float in the parade. So it's really about taking the moment. And I want you to equate that to business, because isn't that exactly what business is like, where we just step into it. We step into it with the energy. You guys have heard me talk enough about energy and matching energy and how our only job is to be the vibration of the person that we want to be. So that equates also to business, because I want you to think about how often we do this to ourselves. Oh, I don't belong in this room. I'm not successful enough yet. I don't have enough followers. I don't have the right certification. I'm not ready. The product's not ready. I don't have the product that would be 8 weeks out ready. Meanwhile, the people that we're trying to reach, the people that want a life change, the people that we are helping to bring more life to and trying to reach, they aren't out there scanning for perfection. As a matter of fact, with the trust degradation that's going on right now, perfection is considered AI. They're not, they're responding to energy, to your authenticity, to someone who actually showed up and participated instead of standing on the sidelines waiting for permission. Or for me in my life, it used to be I would hide behind a camera. I rarely take pictures these days, which is not always great either. But I want to say this really plainly, though, when it comes to business. The marketplace rewards courage before it ever asks for credentials. It rewards authenticity. It rewards knowing and having that sovereignty and knowing who you are and what you do to help the world before it ever asks for credentials from you. Now, we kind of accidentally became the fun in this, but here's the funny part of the story. We didn't just join the parade. We kind of became one of the attractions. People were laughing, snapping pictures, waving us down, hollering at us from the crowd. Kids were coming out wanting necklaces. And here's the thing. We weren't marketing ourselves. We weren't networking. We weren't selling a single thing. We were just fully completely present. And being present meant having a lot of fun. We did a few donuts. And here's the thing that I've noticed is that participation is magnetic. Have you ever noticed that? Like when somebody's fully engaged, when people fully show up, they're the ones you remember. Not because they were trying to impress you, but because they were present. And that's a lot rarer than what you think. Because we tend to over-engineer everything, and it really ends up costing us. So here's something I see all the time with entrepreneurs, and honestly, I've done it myself. Someone has a great idea for their business, and instead of testing it out in the world, they spend 8 months designing the perfect logo. Someone who wants to start coaching, they, instead of coaching one person, they're researching microphones. They're building the website. They think they have to have all the fancy stuff to get started. When in fact, you don't have to have that. You don't have to build the website. You don't have to buy software that you don't need yet. Making PDFs that nobody asked for yet. Studying every competitor, going in and trying to perfect your branding and getting the logo. Doing absolutely everything except the actual coaching, except the actual connecting with people and having people then purchase your program. They've mistaken preparation for participation. And I get why, because preparation feels productive and we've been rewarded on being productive. It feels safe. But your next breakthrough is almost never waiting behind another certification. It's waiting behind action, behind some risk taking, just doing the thing. And here's the deal. Exploration gives us real data. So here's another reason that I'm such a believer in this stuff. Exploration hands you real information, not imagined information, not the stuff you dreamed up at your desk at 11 o'clock at night, real tested in the world information. See, you don't figure out your ideal client by sitting there thinking about them. You figure them out through actual conversations. You don't discover your best offer by theorizing it. You discover it by selling. I can't tell you how many times that I've sold something and I switch things as I'm working through it with people. You don't find your message by writing alone in a notebook. You find it by speaking it out loud to people, to real people. So action reveals things to us, thinking predicts. And here's the kicker, the predictions are usually wrong because we're creating a future based off of our own filters that are all messed up to begin with. So let's talk about the most underrated skill when it comes to this, when it comes to being open to exploration, when it comes to be open to being present, and that's listening. One of the greatest skills any entrepreneur can build isn't speaking, it's actually listening. Listening to your customers or your client, listening to your own intuition and your gut, listening to whatever keeps quietly showing up in your life, listening to the conversations that weren't even supposed to happen, listening when someone casually says, I wish someone would just, or I always struggle with this, or I can never find, I call it the spidey senses, right? Like those are clues, real actual clues. Some of the best business ideas come out because they're hiding inside completely casual conversations. The opportunity almost never shows up wearing a name tag that says opportunity and flashing. It comes in the quietness, in the like hearing and listening to people tell you things that then you realize, hey, they need this service or this product that I'm selling. The universe rarely shouts at us. So people ask me all the time, how do I know if it's actually intuition or if I'm just being impulsive? Here's what I've noticed. Intuition whispers and fear screams. Fear says, what if this doesn't work? What if they judge me? What if you fail completely? What if I decide to go out on this date and it doesn't work? It's loud, it's dramatic, it's insistent. Where intuition is quieter. It's much quieter. It sounds more like, what if you just stopped and talked to her? What if you made that call? What if you hosted the event? What if? You notice it's all about the what if. What would it take to make this happen? Another example of where I listened to my intuition is I was spending the day on 4th of July in the afternoon with my son and daughter-in-law and grandkids and their family. is I was down at their lake lot and I stayed down there for quite a while, and I just had this intuitive hit that it was time to leave. And sure enough, I don't like to drive that curvy road, especially after people have been drinking, when there's people coming home from the fireworks in town. So as I was getting ready to pull into my driveway, I saw the big line of cars coming across the bridge, and I thought, I'm so glad I listened to my intuition. Many times, though, that intuition we set aside. And here's the thing, your intuition also says if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. If you have any question or chaos about it, there's usually an untruth in there. So the tiny whispers, those are where the enormous outcomes come. And curiosity didn't kill the cat. Curiosity is a business strategy, and I mean that literally. I genuinely think curiosity is one of the most underrated skills that we have in business. Curious people ask better questions. We innovate almost without trying. As a matter of fact, my marketing person, Meredith, told me the other day, no more new things, right? Like, here's what we're going to focus on in the last 6 months. And I appreciate that. I need that. A lot of entrepreneurs need that because we come up with all these ideas. What happens is we do innovate, but we notice patterns that everybody else walks straight by. We adapt. Curious people adapt because we never assume that we have it all figured out. And here's the kicker, we have to stay open. And because if you are a person that stays open, you see the opportunities that the rest of us miss completely. So in this situation, when I had that thought and just said it out loud, and my friend grabbed on that opportunity, we had the best morning of our lives. Now, I will say this works the same way in relationships. So when we step out of business for a second, because this isn't just a work principle, I want you to think about how many of your best friendships started completely by accident? How many incredible conversations happened only because someone happened to sit down next to you? I have someone in my life, we both ended up at the hairstylist at the same time. And while she was processing one of us, the other one sat down and started it. We started to have this conversation. We started to book our hair appointments at the same time. And now we're fantastic friends and do things all the time. As a matter of fact, I was just at her house a few days ago. So when you think about those chance encounters, those opportunities that are there, how many people in your life have changed the whole trajectory of your life simply because you were open enough to actually engage with them? What I found is if I'm too scheduled, I'm too rigid, I'm too locked into my own agenda, I miss people. I miss events, right? Because life is only made of events. It's only made of experiences. It's made of encounters. And frankly, encounters don't RSVP. So being present, that's what's made it magic. So I keep coming back to this day, this 4th of July, that was just a few days ago for me because I'm recording this. What made this parade so unforgettable? It really wasn't the parade itself. So we're going to take a quick break and I'll be back in a minute to share more with you. I want to pause for a moment because if you're listening to this, you know we were not meant to do this work alone. Build Her is the community I created for women who are building meaningful lives and businesses and want to grow without burnout, self-abandonment, or shrinking to fit. Inside Build Her, we gather monthly for real conversation, intentional teaching, and grounded connection with women who get it. This isn't about hustle, and it's not about fixing yourself. It's about being supported as you lead with clarity, confidence, and intention. So if you feel the pull towards a steady, honest, and expansive community, you're welcome here. Find the link in the show notes or join us at thelituplife.com/buildher. Okay, I'm back, and I want to talk to you about why I keep coming back to the 4th of July and why what made the parade so unforgettable wasn't really the parade itself. It was that everyone involved was fully, completely present. Me, my friend Nicole, her daughter Maddie, and a friend of my bonus daughter Adriana's was on this golf cart. We weren't checking our emails. Nobody was thinking about tomorrow's to-do list. Nobody cared for those 20, 30 minutes about being productive at all. We laughed, we threw necklaces, we talked to total strangers. We just celebrated, we lived, we let our hair down. And sometimes, particularly as entrepreneurs, because we heard the message, get your chores done, do your homework before you go out and play, that we get so busy in the doing of life that we forget to actually experience the one that we've got. So I want to talk a little bit here about how our calendar can become a little bit of a cage, and I really mean that. And it might sting a little. I know it did to me when I started to think about this. And I say this with love because as we go through and look at this as high achievers, particularly, I know I schedule almost everything. If it doesn't make it on my calendar, sometimes I forget about it. But every hour sometimes feels like there's a job to do. Every day has its objectives. Efficiency starts to feel like my whole identity. But here's the danger that nobody warns us about. It's if every single minute is planned, where exactly do we get to put surprise in there? Where does wonder fit in? Where does adventure fit? Where does the universe or God or divine timing or whatever you want to call it, where does any of that get a chance to show up and wow me? So here's what I'm going to tell you. Leave margin, actual unstructured margin in your calendar, because margin is where the miracles and the magic tend to sneak in. So when I think back, my biggest breaks were never on the plan. When I think about the defining moments, those weren't on the plan. The random conversation that turned into a client, the client who ended up referring 10 more, the speaking gig I almost said no to, the collaboration that came out of nowhere, the introduction I almost skipped, the chance encounter I almost walked past. None of it was perfectly orchestrated. It happened because I was available and I was open to receiving. And I don't mean just physically available, energetically available. That's what I mean by openness. I was ready to say yes before I'd fully thought it through. Now, there is a danger in this because sometimes being busy and being available, well, not sometimes, it's not the same thing. Because some people stay incredibly busy their entire lives and they're still completely unavailable. They're unavailable to new ideas, they're unavailable to feedback, unavailable to their own intuition, unavailable to an opportunity that doesn't match the plan they already had in their head. They're unavailable to the potential relationship that they could have. You can be fully booked and completely closed off, or you can have an open calendar and an open heart. Guess which one actually creates more possibility? So let's talk about the real lesson from the parade. Here's the biggest lesson I took from all this, and it's not what you'd think. We didn't force our way in. We didn't demand a spot. We simply participated. We contributed something. We added a little joy to a day that already had plenty of it, and we accepted what was offered back to us. The folks in front of us shared their swag with total strangers. They trusted us. They just included us. And it made me wonder, how often do we refuse help in our own lives because we think we have to earn it first? How often do we say, no, thanks, I've got this, or I don't want to bother anyone? As I mentioned before, receiving is just as powerful as giving. Those beaded necklaces weren't just plastic beads. They were small, perfect symbols of collaboration. And let me tell you, the entrepreneur who wins, they win long term. They're the ones that stay flexible. Because something I've noticed after years of doing this is that the most successful entrepreneurs, and it's successful based on what they consider to be successful, aren't necessarily the smartest people in the room. They're the most adaptable because the market shifts, technology shifts. We're seeing huge technology shifts with AI right now, customer shifts, client shifts, financial shifts. And the entrepreneur who leans in and says, interesting. What can I learn from this? Being curious. They're always the one that's going to outlast the ones that insist, this is how I've always done it. I saw that in COVID too. Exploration is what keeps a business and honestly a person alive. So here's your invitation for this week or over this next couple of weeks. I want to challenge you with this. Say yes to one thing you normally wouldn't. Take the scenic route home. Invite someone to coffee out of nowhere. Show up at that networking event you've been dodging. Post the idea before it's perfect, because remember, people don't relate to perfect. Call the person you keep thinking about for no reason. Start the conversation. Ask the question you've been sitting on. Launch the offer. Take the class. Sit next to someone new. Listen a little more deeply than usual and follow one small, quiet, intuitive nudge, even if you have no idea where it leads. Not because you know how it ends, but because the exploration itself is the valuable part. So as we come to kind of a close here, I want to leave you with a few last thoughts. This 4th of July is going to stay with me for a long, long time. Not because we crashed a parade, although people can say they crashed weddings, but how many people can say they crashed a parade? But because it really reminded me that life isn't always asking us to build something. Sometimes life is just asking us to join in, to participate, to laugh, to contribute, to receive, to trust, and to explore. The funny thing is, if you'd asked me that morning what my plans were for the day, becoming an honorary parade participant would not have made that list, not even close. And actually, the gentleman that was with us said, that didn't make my bingo card today. And yet, it's the story I couldn't wait to tell people. So I'll leave you with this. How many stories are waiting for you on the other side of one unexpected yes? How many breakthroughs are hiding inside a conversation you've almost had a dozen times but keep putting it off? How many relationships are waiting because you're willing to set the phone down and actually listen? How much joy is available the second you stop trying to control every single outcome and just start participating more fully in the moment you're already standing in? Your life doesn't need another perfectly executed plan. Sometimes what it needs is a little wonder, a little more curiosity, a little more courage, and maybe, just maybe, the willingness to crash a parade. Because the most extraordinary moments in life rarely begin with certainty. They begin with someone asking, what if, and someone else smiling back and saying, let's do it. So until next time, remember, your purpose isn't just to build a successful business. It's to build a life that feels fully lived. So stay curious, my friends, stay open, and keep saying yes to the possibilities quietly waiting to surprise you. May you be surprised this week. Thanks, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for being here and for choosing to spend your time in this conversation. If this work resonates with you, subscribe to the podcast and stay with us as we continue to explore what it means to lead, grow, and live with intention. Let's build your version of the lit up life. I'll see you in the next episode.